What is up, guys? This is Orcaflop, and today I'm coming at you with another video. Today is going to be Noobs Car Guide number 3, the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. One of my favorite cars of all time. One of my favorite cars from my favorite American manufacturer, Pontiac. I can't wait to review this one. Obviously, you guys voted for this. 75% over the Toyota Supra, which was 25%. So, how about we review one of my favorite cars of all time, and one of the most legendary cars in American car culture. The Pontiac Trans Am was being developed, and it was being, it was being developed in 1965, seeing as how Chevy was also developing a similar car to the Mustang, which the Mustang has now developed this new class called the Pony Car class, the Pony Car muscle class, which is basically a shorter coupe with a big engine. So Pontiac and Chevy, they came out with the Camaro and the Firebird at the same time. And really, the Firebird, the only reason the Firebird was created was because of the main fact they wanted to beat Chevy and Ford in this new pony car muscle class. And the reason they picked the name Firebird Trans Am was because Trans Am, people actually went and voted to Pontiac what name they wanted, and Trans Am happened to be one of those names. So they went with Trans Am, and then they wanted an animal like the Ford Mustang had. Mustang, it's a horse. So they chose Firebird, which is basically a phoenix, if you think about it. So the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am is developed mainly, just like the Camaro, to be competitive with the Ford Mustang. And 1967, the Pontiac Trans Am had dual headlights with a half grill, and it had very striped taillights, and it was very fast, making 226 horsepower in its first release, with a 488 cubic inch V8. It was very powerful in the late 60s, and it was a very staple car in this time of era. And then the gas crisis hit in 1971, and Pontiac and Chevy and Ford were in a bit of a cluster. As they continued to develop the Camaro and the Mustang, Pontiac had to do something to the Trans Am as well. So what they did, they put a 387 cubic inch V8 in it. They made it more of a small block V8, and they changed up the model to double tail light, or double headlights, only two headlights, and still grill slanted in the middle, and still the rear vertical lights. So it really didn't change that much, except they really changed the headlights and the overall aerodynamics of the Trans Am to make it perform better than the Mustang and the Camaro. And Motor Trend in 1974 said the Trans Am in this new pony car class was the fastest car and best performing in the class. It beat the Camaro. It beat the Mustang at, what was it? I think it was Road America back then. It actually outdid the Mustang and the Camaro, and it is the best pony car as of now. 1976, they make the engine bigger again. Now that the gas crisis is over, they go back to the 488 cubic inch V8. The primary color now is black, and it's still got the two circle headlights, but the rear end, the tail lights, the vertical tail lights were extended a little bit, so it looked different in the rear. And it was they had two roof detachments that had a glass top as well. You could take those off now. And the Trans Am was not only now a very staple muscle car, it was sort of developing into a luxury car as well. And the Chevy Camaro in the mid-70s also had a similar model. And then the Ford Mustang in the mid-70s was on a downfall. They had the Mach 1. The Mach 1 was okay. But then in 1978, they had the King Cobra with a 3.1 liter V6, and it really wasn't that great. And 1977, the Pontiac Trans Am now would become one of the most famous cars and well-known cars in America, with a movie called, one of my favorite movies of all time, Smokey and the Bandit, starring Burt Reynolds and shoot, was it Jerry Reed's? I think it was. Great movie. I definitely recommend you go watch it. If you're a NASCAR fan, if you're a motorsports fan or a car enthusiast, watch Smokey and the Bandit. Because, in fact, I think it has the Southern 500, and it's just a perfect combination of motorsports and cars and the car. It's perfect. Smokey and the Bandit is a amazing movie, and they used the 1977 Trans Am, which really wasn't changed up from the 1976 Trans Am. It went back to the quadruple headlights, but still with a slanted grille. And this time, they made it black and they put the Pontiac logo in front with the little star. They put the Pontiac logo in the front, and the Trans Am, ever since then, was very well known and very popular because of Smokey and the Bandit. They would go on to make more Smokey and the Bandit movies, but they weren't as great of a hit as the first one. But they continued to use the more modern Trans Ams at the time. 1978, they really changed up the Trans Am. They made the taillights a bit darker, and it's hard to describe the front end. They still had the Pontiac logo in the middle, and they still had the detachable rooftops and all that. But the thing about the 1978 Trans Am to the 1981 Trans Am is that they still had the four headlights in the front, but they were each, so here's the headlight, here's the headlight, they were slanted in the middle, and then here's the headlight, slanted headlight. It was very odd looking at the time, and I think that's why it didn't sell well as the 77 and 76 Trans Ams. And even if you want to go back, it didn't sell as well as the 67 Trans Ams. But it still sold well. Like, it didn't sell, what I'm trying to get at is it didn't sell as well as the previous Firebirds, but it sold well enough to keep Pontiac going on their hot streak. And then 1987 rolls around. People are trying to avoid big block muscle cars, but Pontiac does in 1987, the LS1. Yes, it wasn't just a Chevy engine. It was an overall GM-created engine, and they made the LS1 so they could put mainly more horsepower in the Corvette. But GM decided, hey, why don't we use this new engine to help all of our performance products on the road? So, the 1987, the Pontiac released the Turbo Trans Am, and this consisted of a turbocharged LS1 Trans Am that still had the rear tail lights slanted, but the front end was very weird. It looked kind of like, do I want to say an RX-7? I kind of did. It had pop-up headlights. And it was very sleek in the front. It was a very more sleek aerodynamic design because this was the early 90s, late 80s. GM was mainly looking for performance out of their products. So the Firebird Trans Am got a total redesign, and it had a more sleeker front end, and it had pop-up headlights similar to the Nissan 240SX and the Mazda Miata and RX-7 at the time. So it was trying to cater to those fans because JDM was rising big, and if muscle cars still wanted to be a staple thing in America, they had to do similar to what JDM cars do. So, and then 1993 rolls around. The LS1 is still a very powerful engine. It's a 5.7-liter V8, and it is making now 335 horsepower as they continue to improve the valves, the springs, the antifreeze. Yes, LS1 has antifreeze because it's able to drive in the winter, surprisingly. And then they bump up the cams. They get better pistons, and now it's popping 335 horsepower. And in 1993, once again, the Trans Am will get a total redesign, as well as the Chevrolet Camaro that I talked about in the last video. You can go watch that if you want. So, in that video, I said they could develop the Catfish Camaro. Well, guess what? Ford, the competition's still going on between the three manufacturers, Pontiac, Chevy, and Ford. You really think Pontiac's going to back out that easy? I don't think so. Along with Chevy and Ford, Pontiac redevelops the Trans Am to be even more aerodynamic than the last, with a higher horsepower LS1. And And with this new Trans Am, you have an even sleeker front end with a more of a pointing edge, similar to how stock cars and NASCAR are developed. It had a very pointy front end, but the back, I like to call it the beehive taillights because it kind of looks like that. It's got the Trans Am and Firebird logo in the middle, shaded around with a black area, and then the rest of it you have the red taillights with little octagons surrounded by them. So that's why I call it the beehive taillights. And this Trans Am would go out until 2002, until unfortunately Pontiac discontinued the Trans Am due to costs of performance, and just Pontiac was losing money at the time, but they gained it back in 2004. But in 2002 they were on a bit of a downfall. And in order to save spending costs, they had to discontinue the Trans Am, which is very unfortunate. And what's even more unfortunate is that a co-company with Pontiac at the time, Trans Am Worldwide, didn't have enough expenses to keep the Trans Am name going. So they haven't been able to develop a new Trans Am. And also in 2002, the Camaro was discontinued for a good while, as the Mustang finally came out on top at this point. But the Trans Am name wasn't completely dead. In 2010, when the Camaro came back, Trans Am Worldwide had been saving up much money. They brought back the legendary Firebird, but it's not a sold product, but it is a concept. It's got the similar body to the Camaro body, but it's got a very sleeker front end with a Pontiac logo. And it has the LT2 engine, not the LT1, the shitty one in the Camaro. It's got the LT2, which sounds much better in my opinion. And overall, this new concept Firebird is apparently supposed to be a lot better. It's supposed to be more performance, and it's supposed to beat the Camaro and the Mustang GT. So again, Trans Am Worldwide only has enough money to really release the concept. They can't put this car into production until probably 2025. So, till then, the Trans Am is still really a discontinued car, and GM would go on to make the stupidest decision ever by discontinuing Pontiac as a whole in 2009. That's a video for a whole other day. If you want to know how I feel about GM, then you can just watch the GM video I made a long time ago. Like I said, why GM is getting hate, I believe that was the title. So you can go watch that if you really want to know how I feel about GM from 2009 and up. Now. So, the Trans Am, now, this is what I do with every Noobs Car Guide video. What was so significant about the Trans Am, and what made the Trans Am so popular? Oh, and I also forgot to mention the Turbo Trans Am. If anyone heard of the TV show Knight Rider, that was the primary car that he would use. I forgot the character's name. I can't believe that. But I never really watched Knight Rider, so I don't really know. But I did know that they used an 87 Trans Am Turbo, and that was... the character's name was Kit, I think. I don't know. But the car Kit would use was an 87 Trans Am that was able to talk to him, and it was very cool. So that's also what made the Trans Am famous and sell well. What made the Trans Am so significant? The Trans Am was unique. It would do many various things, and the Trans Am is very underrated if you think about it. Compared to the Camaro and Mustang, of course, the Camaro and Mustang are on top. But if you think about it, the reason the Trans Am is so significant within the car community is it's so underrated. I think people, when they think of muscle cars, they think of Camaro, Mustang, Charger, Challenger. They forget about Pontiac in general. That's the GTO as well. The Trans Am was such a good car. It had as much performance value as the Mustang and the Camaro, but what made the Trans Am so special was that it was the underdog. It was the one that was taking on the big dogs and Pontiac, I'm not going to lie, wasn't that big of a company as Chevy or Ford, but it was able to take on the Camaro, was able to take on the Mustang. I think a lot of people overlook the Trans Am, which is why I like to talk about the Trans Am. Because I feel like even though it was, made famous because of Smokey and the Bandit and Knight Rider, it was even still with all those movies and, it being appearing in Hollywood films and shows, it was still overlooked by the Mustang and the Camaro, and I think people always forget that the Trans Am was a legendary muscle car and had such great performance value through all of its years in production. Now, why is the Trans Am my favorite muscle car? For that same reason. I think, personally, all models of the Trans Am looked amazing. And I grew up watching Smokey and the Bandit, and I loved the black 77 Firebird that they used. And the Trans Am has just been such a staple in my heart. It's been one of my favorite muscle cars of all time. Actually, it's my favorite muscle car. And Pontiac's my favorite American manufacturer, if you know me well. And the perfect combination is Truex and IROC drove a Trans Am. It's a win-win. My favorite driver used to drive for Pontiac and IROC. So that's awesome. So the Trans Am, I just loved it because it was so underrated compared to the Camaro and Mustang. And I just think it looked better personally than the Camaros and the Mustangs. I just think the Trans Am really held out. Oh, I forgot to mention the 2002 Trans Am with the LS1. It was trimmed as WS6. I forgot to mention that. And it's just so important to my heart because I've grown up with always loving all the Firebirds. I've always grown up liking the look of them. I love the look of the 2002 Trans Am. I think it looked amazing. And to me, all the Trans Ams, they just looked so good to the point where that I knew instantly that's my car. That's the one I like, and that's the one I'm always going to stick with. So, just the look of the Trans Ams and the performance value that's what made my heart in love with the Trans Am, and that's why it's my favorite muscle car of all time, which is why I'm in a good mood to review this. Rest in peace, Pontiac Trans Am. Like I said, the earliest we're going to see the Trans Am worldwide manufactured Firebird is going to be as earliest of 2025 because they only have so much money. They got to save more to actually develop the car and put it into production. So, the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, very staple car in the community, and even with all the Hollywood showings of it, still underrated and still a great performing car for its class. And that's why I love it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next. Again, I'll make a Twitter poll of what I'll give you guys 2 cars and you tell me either or. I might do a JDM car next because I've been doing 3 straight muscle cars. We gotta get some JDM in here, guys. Like a Supra or a Skyline. So I might do a JDM car next. I don't know. I mean, then again, I'll put up a Twitter poll. I don't think my Twitter poll is going to contain a muscle car for the main reason I'm just, let's try something different. Even though I loved reviewing the Trans Am, even still, put in the comments section a car that I should review next. Please do. And I'm also going to put a Twitter poll on. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I hope you learned something about the Trans Am and why I love Pontiac and why Pontiac's the best. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.